a female vet and a Jewish vet, who sent me an email recently. And she said, I quote, "Without doubt, during my almost 20 years as a vet, I've never witnessed anything as horrific as shahita slaughter. That horror lives fresh in my mind today. And having been raised and now living in a kosher home, I do not and never have eaten a piece of kosher meat since the day I witnessed this barbaric practice. Indeed, I have seen much suffering and many severe injuries in the animals I have treated over the years, but nothing comes close to the unnecessary and brutal suffering that these animals experience at the very end of their lives." Now note, that's a veterinary surgeon who, qualified as an official veterinary surgeon, has done a lot of meat hygiene work and has witnessed the slaughter of many animals involving both stunning and non-stunning.
Now let me emphasize mother's milk, because that seems cruel somehow. The notion of animal protection is stronger in Judaism, I would argue, than any other of the world religions. And I want to speak purely as a scientist. First of all, we've heard a number of assertions here which are not scientific. Death is not by exsanguination, with all due respect to the noble Lord Aldries. It's due to interruption of the blood supply to the brain, which is immediate and has been measured. The problem with EEG measurements, electro recording, is that they are unsound and have been shown to be unsound. Indeed, the only way you could actually detect pain would be by positron emission scanning of the brain, and that actually doesn't obviously clearly show any activity at all once the blood supply is cut within 2 seconds. I have also to say that stunning, I would argue that shahita is a much more humane method than stunning. On the contrary, it's a better method of killing animals because there is less suffering. First of all, animals have to be calm. They're not manhandled roughly. The noble lord is not the only one who's been to an abattoir. And they're not pleasant places. It's never pleasant to see any kind of animal killed under any circumstances. But the truth is that we would not, under the Home Office Act, be allowed to slaughter laboratory animals with stunning, because it would not be regarded as being a proper way of culling an animal in a laboratory. We would have to do it really by something which is actually much closer to cutting the blood supply to the brain. And I want to emphasize that with regard to pain, this is another assumption. Of course, animals may move after the brain is severed, but the brain itself does not perceive pain if it's damaged. And in fact, none of the organs below the skin have pain fibers. You have some pain fibers in your trachea, but they're very small. And the evidence that animals have severe pain after a cut with an extremely sharp knife in one blow is really extremely arguable. The truth is that once you're unconscious, nobody knows what the perception of death or pain was.
It's my contention that unnecessary suffering is being caused to a very substantial number of animals by slaughter without stunning. And I want to address this under 3 headings: inconsistency, injury, and insult. In terms of inconsistency, my lords, we rightly pride ourselves here in Britain on our animal welfare regulations and our humaneness. Recently, it has been made an offence to dock a puppy dog's tail. Now, that is something that involved a snip with a pair of scissors, and at best in a week-old pup, and at best evoked a slight yelp. My lords, we have made that illegal, and I'm happy with that law.
Thank you.
Yet we allow...
I wish to dwell on the selectivity in the question. Some animals. Ethical, religious and legal factors should be universally applied and not selective. This is a country in which fishing is a national pastime. Fish die from being left to suffocate and being gutted, which takes quite a while. We shoot foxes and trap them. We cull badgers by shooting and maybe gassing. We shoot stags and pheasants. We decapitate rabbits. Millions of lobsters have their claws bound and are thrown into boiling water where they thrash for a long time. Chickens and turkeys are swept through electrically charged water bath and then immersed in scalding water, but it frequently goes wrong. It's been found that 26% of turkeys and 1/3 of chickens probably enter the scalding water while still alive and sensible. Stunning cattle is vaunted as superior to Jewish slaughter, but it frequently goes wrong. The Jewish method ensures immediate cerebral perfusion and is irreversible, No electric prods are used and one animal is not killed in the presence of another. I'm not myself religious in my attitude to food, but I greatly respect the attitude of those who are orthodox and their religious slaughtermen who regard the killing of animals as an act that should be not only humane, but infused with respect and reverence, remembering at all times the gravity of what they do, and never becoming slapdash or hardened. This attitude should be more widespread so that we do not see newspaper reports of deliberate mistreatment of animals in abattoirs for fun. The European Food Safety Authority found that about 12 million cows suffer from failed stunning. That greatly exceeds the entire annual quantity of cattle slaughtered for the Jewish religious community, a few thousand. There should be much more focus on what goes wrong in stunning and the cruelty inflicted on other animals, and less pointing the finger at the Jewish few thousand, if we are to be fair and ethical in our worries.
Now, I should point out here, my lords, that the majority of sheep that are killed for halal purposes in the UK are pre-stunned. Thus, my lords, I contend that given the nature of the biological insult and the numbers involved, slaughter without stunning is a major, if not the major, animal welfare issue in the United Kingdom. But I do sincerely ask the Muslim and Jewish communities and their leaders to reflect and consider whether ancient practices which had good reason many hundreds of years ago are necessary today.
My lords, I speak as a Muslim who consumes halal meat on a regular basis. Islam forbids mistreatment of animals, and the welfare of animals is enshrined in the Muslim beliefs. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, has said, a good deed done to an animal is like a good deed done to a human being, while an act of cruelty to an animal is as bad as cruelty to a human being. Islam permits the slaughter of animals for food, but dictates that such slaughter must be exercised in a humane fashion. My lords, there has never been any conclusive scientific evidence to suggest that religious slaughter is any less humane than conventional mechanical methods. The controversy primarily revolves around the issue of stunning. Exemption from stunning is allowed for halal and kosher slaughter. In a halal slaughter, the animal ceases to feel pain due to the immediate brain starvation of blood and oxygen. For the first few seconds after the incision is made, the animal does not feel any pain. This is followed by a few seconds of deep unconsciousness as large quantities of blood are drained from the body. Thereafter, readings indicate no pain at all. It is important to consider that prohibiting halal meat would have profound social and economic implications. There are now 2.7 million Muslim United Kingdom, that is 4.8% of the population. Halal meat accounts for 10 to 15% of UK meat sales. Some of the meat is, however, pre-stunned. People from all religions and backgrounds now choose halal as an alternately produced meat. I want to see a rigorous code of conduct and efficient system of self-regulation. This would reassure non-Muslims that such animals are being respected and standards are being adhered to. I would also like to see a full and transparent system of labeling put in place for all meats so the consumer can make an informed decision about the meat they choose to buy. Labeling should not be confined to religiously slaughtered meat. Finally, my lords, I know that Islamic leaders have asked the Jewish community for guidance in this respect, and I hope that they can work together.
My lords, all the independent animal welfare bodies advocate stunning before slaughter. FORP, British Veterinary Association, Federation of Veterinarians in Europe, the RSPCA, the Humane Slaughter Association. Furthermore, the food quality assurance schemes such as Red Tractor and the Soil Association do not permit non-stun slaughter. In Europe, Sweden, Norway, Switzerland and Iceland have disallowed non-stun slaughter, and New Zealand does not permit non-stun abattoir slaughter of mammals. Significantly, New Zealand does export large amounts of sheep meat to Muslim communities in Asia and the Middle East, which has been reversibly stunned and is certified as halal. The EU is currently conducting a study on providing consumers with the relevant information on the stunning of animals by labelling of meat products. In the UK, the Beef and Lamb Trade Organisation, EBLEX, is working on the issue of clear labelling with halal producers. My Lords, I ask the government, and this is my question to the government, if they will support measures.
The focus of this debate has not been on the effects of stunning and how those go wrong. And in researching for this debate this afternoon, I have to say I've been horrified at some of the things that do go wrong. The Vegetarians International Voice for Animals, and I should say that they are opposed to religious slaughter, say that tens of millions of animals are being ineffectively stunned and are regaining consciousness while they bleed to death. It's a horrific number. I thought I'd look at the legal position. The European Council regulations actually recognise that the stunning methods that are listed in their annexure are not the only methods. Those intimately involved in this work believe and argue that Jewish religious slaughter, properly undertaken and as described by the Noble Lord Winston, also constitutes acceptable stunning because it instantly cuts off the blood supply to the brain. And this comes within the definition of stunning provided in the regulations. That definition is as follows: any intentionally induced process which causes loss of consciousness and sensibility without pain, including any process resulting in instantaneous death. Properly undertaken, my lords, I understand that is exactly what Jewish religious slaughter seeks to achieve. The welfare of the animal animal pre-slaughter is paramount in the Jewish religion. Any animal or bird which is even slightly harmed before slaughter is not considered suitable for kosher consumption. Special care is taken to ensure that the animal is calm before slaughter. Use of electric prods and the like is absolutely prohibited. It's also the case, my lords, that the European regulations expressly respect the freedom of religion and the right to manifest religion or belief in worship, teaching, practice and observance, as enshrined in Article 10 of the European Union Charter of Fundamental Rights, which provides everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience and religion. This right includes freedom to change religion.
There are non-lethal, non-invasive methods of stunning. And even if there is disagreement on the extent of or duration of pain per section, is it not time to adopt stunning to preclude the possibility of unnecessary suffering, as indeed some Muslim food authorities have allowed?
According to the European Food Safety Authority's report in 2004, the failure rate for penetrating and non-penetrating captive bolts affects around 10 million animals, causing the animal grave distress. In Britain, some 3 million cows annually are affected by these failures, compared to the 20,000 cows killed annually by shechita, so that the pain caused to animals by use of pre-stunning methods vastly outweighs that caused by shechita, even were it the case that shechita did cause extra moments of pain. However, we are not convinced that such is the case. The failure rates of pre-stunning and the inconclusive and highly challenged nature of some of the experimental studies done in this field should give us pause. If, therefore, a case is made for labeling meat to indicate how the animal was killed, this must apply to all methods of slaughter, not just to some.
The demise of local slaughterhouses in the UK means that animals now often have to be travelled a long way for slaughter. By the time an animal in the UK reaches its final destination, it's often tired, stressed, confused by the unfamiliarity and frightened by the smell, so loss of consciousness should be instantaneous. Bill Riley, a past president of the British Veterinary Association, has expressed the view that slaughter without stunning causes suffering, also echoed by the Farm Animal Welfare Council.
My Lords,
declare an interest. I'm a meat eater, and I am personally offended if expected to eat meat from non-stunned food production animals. As such, I have no problem whatsoever with religious slaughter, but I don't wish to eat non-stunned meat, and therefore it should be labelled. It should be labelled where born, raised, slaughtered, and the method of slaughter. Perfectly acceptable information for consumers to be put on the label. One of the problems with this issue, by the way, there is no central authority for halal meat. The rules vary around the world, so it can't be policed. All New Zealand lamb entering the UK is classified as halal. It's all pre-stunned before slaughter. There isn't a problem. Over my years as a minister, MAF and DEFRA, and as the FSA chair, I visited dozens of abattoirs. Now, the FSA is only responsible for the enforcement of animal welfare regs as a contractor to DEFRA, as the minister will make clear. It's not a food safety issue.
My Lords, I wholeheartedly support the case made by Lord True and the evidence that he outlined that slaughter by throat cutting without pre-stunning is absolutely unacceptable in animal welfare terms. But like other speakers, time is short, and therefore the important issue for me today is to put on record that yes, we must respect the rights of the religious communities, but equally we must respect the rights of consumers for them to be able to make informed choices about the food they eat. At present, a concerned consumer can go and buy red tractor meat or Freedom Food meat, or go into Waitrose where all meat is pre-stunned. Or if they're in Southall, they can go into the McDonald's and buy a halal burger, which is pre-stunned. But there are millions of animals, as Lord Rooker has outlined, that go into they're slaughtered in the UK without pre-slaughter. And with the Muslim and the Jewish community only comprising about 4 to 5% of the population, that means a vast percentage of people in this country are unwittingly buying food which has been slaughtered without pre-stunning. It's an incredibly timely debate today. It's surprising that we haven't debated it more frequently in this House, but it's timely because at this very moment the regulations are currently being discussed in the European Parliament, and those certainly should help consumers make informed choices about the food they buy. And they could do even more if they included mandatory labelling of the slaughter methods by exception, and I make that point. That is, only the meat that is slaughtered without pre-stunning requires labelling, in my opinion. Can I therefore add my voice to that of Lord True to ask the Minister what discussions the Government has had with the European Union Commission on the study they are commissioning at the present time, which is due out in April, into the effectiveness and applicability of labelling meat products on the methods of slaughter. And if those draft proposals were to emerge as a result of that study, whether my government would support, as I do, the EU-wide mandatory labelling of non-pre-stunned meat.
My Lords, I do not disagree with the labelling of meat. Jews do it already for the kosher food trade. There are a number of legal but unpleasant methods of mechanical stunning that if meat is to be labelled, it should all be labelled alongside the humane religious slaughter. And these include shooting, mostly hunting and game birds, captive bolt gun to the skull for cows and sheep, chickens shackled by their ankles and dipped in a water bath that has electric current running through it, gassing of pigs who are herded into a room and gassed, trapping and clubbing, mostly used for hunting. It is important, my Lords, to be honest about the incidences of misstunning which are recorded. The European Food Safety Authority's report on the welfare aspects of animal stunning and killing methods found that the failure rate for penetrating captive bolt stunning in non-kosher slaughter of cattle may be as high as 6.6%, and 8%, the Lord Winston says, and that for non-penetrating captive bolt stunning and electric stunning, this can be raised to as high as 31%. The percentages of misstuns far exceed the total quantity of animals slaughtered for the Jewish community. Millions of animals are misstunned and left in great distress of Europe every year. I say, label all this meat. And that deals with Lord Rooker's problem. 2 million cattle, 8 million pigs, 9 million sheep and lambs are slaughtered every year. Of these, the Jewish community slaughters only 90,000 red meat animals. And if you're rounding that to the nearest percentage point, it's 0%. Similarly, 750 million birds are slaughtered every year, of which the Jewish community slaughters maybe 500,000, a fraction of 1%. A new European Commission published on the 19th of December 2013 on the various stunning methods of poultry concludes that although there are serious animal welfare concerns about the water bath stunning of poultry, more humane methods are not economically viable.
My Lords, can I start by thanking the Noble Lord Trees for securing a debate on this very important issue, and all Noble Lords for making some really important and informative points on all sides of the argument so concisely. My Lords, this is a subject I'm intensely interested in, and indeed I think I should start by saying that we are completely committed to improving standards of animal welfare, including welfare at slaughter. I should highlight that my response on behalf of the government applies only to England. The devolved authorities are responsible for their own animal welfare policy. My Lords, in 2012, in England, 764 million poultry, 8.4 million sheep, 8.1 million pigs and 1.4 million cattle were slaughtered. Given the sheer numbers involved, it's right that we take the welfare of animals at slaughter very seriously indeed. The public rightly expect the government to ensure that appropriate welfare measures are in place. So in late 2012, we consulted on the best way to implement the new EU Regulation 1099 of 2009 on the protection of animals at the time of killing. After careful consideration of responses, we decided to retain all existing national rules protecting the welfare of animals at killing, including those on religious slaughter, where they provided greater protection than the EU regulation. We'll bring forward new secondary legislation soon to consolidate these national rules with the new requirements under the EU regulation. In coming to that decision, the government assessed the key factors, legal, ethical, and religious, raised in this debate. I think in answer to the Noble Lord Grantchester's question, I anticipate laying the regulations in April. My Lords, as regards legal factors, Council Regulation 1099 of 2009 provides for the protection of animals at the time of slaughter and came into effect on the 1st of January last year. It aims to ensure animals are spared avoidable pain, distress or suffering at the time of slaughter, and therefore requires that animals are stunned before they are killed. The only exception, as this debate has widely covered, is where animals are slaughtered according to religious rites. The EU regulation also requires religious slaughter to take place only in an approved slaughterhouse and allows member states to introduce additional national rules for religious slaughter. It is on this basis that we will retain our existing national rules on religious slaughter in the new domestic regulations and provide more extensive welfare protection to animals slaughtered in accordance with the religious rights than that provided by the EU regulation. Our existing national rules provide greater protection than those contained in the EU regulation in relation to, for example, cattle restraints, the method of killing, and the handling of animals. We will maintain our rule on standstill time, which means that animals must not be moved after the neck is cut until they are unconscious, and in any event, not before a minimum period depending on species. My Lords, I think it's worth saying that our stricter national rules take into account human rights legislation, including Article 9 of the European Convention on Human Rights, the right to freedom of religion, and the freedom to manifest one's religion or beliefs, and Article 14, prohibiting discrimination on grounds of race or religion. Consumption of meat is a matter of personal choice. Those who choose to eat meat expect animals to be slaughtered, to be treated humanely when they are slaughtered. This is reflected in both the EU and domestic legislation, which require that animals are spared any avoidable pain, distress or suffering, both when they are handled and at the time of slaughter. As the Noble Lord Trees said, the Farm Animal Welfare Council's 2003 report on the welfare of farmed animals at slaughter proposed that non-stunned slaughter should be banned on the basis that it caused unnecessary suffering. That view needs to be balanced against the rights of Jewish and Muslim communities to eat meat prepared in accordance with their religious beliefs. My Lords, to insist on pre-stunned slaughter would also effectively deny Jews and Muslims access to meat slaughtered in this country. Whilst the government would prefer to see all animals stunned before slaughter, it respects the rights of Jewish and Muslim communities to eat meat prepared in accordance with their religious beliefs. It is worth noting, my Lords, that the term religious slaughter does not automatically mean that the animals are slaughtered without being stunned. Some, as I think the Lords have mentioned, some halal meat comes from animals that are stunned before slaughter. My noble friend Baroness Fuchs asked why not require post-cut stunning. My Lords, this is, as we've seen, a very complex subject, but can I just say that I understand that animals subject to post-cut stunning would no longer be acceptable to some religious communities. Baroness Deach, the noble Lord Palmer, and my noble friend Lord Gold referred to mis-stuns of cattle in conventional slaughtering. My Lords, all animals that are mis-stunned must be immediately re-stunned, and operators are required by law to check that stuns are effective, and the process is checked by independent vets. The noble Lord Trees, noble Lord Rooker, noble Lord Gloucester, my noble friend Baroness Fuchs, Parmenter, my noble friend Lord Sheikh, and my noble friend Lord Palmer all spoke about labelling. My Lords, the government is very well aware of concern about non-stunned meat being sold onto the general meat market. We agree with noble Lords who've made the point that consumers should have the information to make an informed choice. There are, it has to be said, some practical difficulties in identifying method of slaughter for all meat from the point of slaughter to the point of consumption. So the European Commission, who are well aware of our view, has commissioned a study on the labelling of meat from non-stunned animals. We await the results of the study due shortly. My Lords, we will look very carefully at all options available for providing information to consumers in light of the study, and I'm sure noble Lords will want to revert to this subject when we have the results of that study. My Lords, we remain committed to improving the welfare of animals at slaughter, and as my noble friend Baroness Fuchs proposed, to a continuing dialogue with all those concerned, particularly on the issues raised in this debate.